Venus in the Signs Intro. Today we're starting a series on Venus in the Signs. Venus is usually described as love, attraction, beauty, and money. That's correct, but incomplete. In a chart, Venus shows how you relate to what you want. It describes your instinct for connection, your taste, your way of giving and receiving, and the kind of experiences that feel worth having. It also shows how you handle pleasure, how you attach value to people and things, and how easily you allow yourself to enjoy what is already available. This is why Venus is not only about relationships. It's about preference. It's about selection. It's about what you move toward and what you quietly reject. Two people can want love, but mean completely different things by it. One may need directness and movement, another needs stability and time. One is drawn to stimulation, another to calm. That difference is not random. Venus explains it. The sign Venus is in shows how that instinct operates. It changes the pace, the tone, and the expectations. Some Venus placements move quickly and lose interest just as fast if there is no response. Others take their time and only open when something proves itself. Some respond to words, others to consistency, others to presence, others to intensity. The same applies to money and value. Venus describes what you consider worth investing in, what you naturally attract, and where you may either overextend or hold back. It often shows where things come easily and where they become complicated because your sense of value is not aligned with reality yet. In the natal chart, the sign gives the style, the house shows the area of life, and the aspects modify how smoothly or intensely Venus operates. So this series focuses on the sign first. We're going to look at how Venus behaves in each sign, how it approaches attraction, what it responds to, what it avoids, and where it tends to create both ease and problems if it's not understood properly. No cliches, no simplified labels, just how the placement actually works. Venus in Taurus. Venus in Taurus does not rush. This is Venus in one of her own signs, which means the planet can operate in a way that is natural to her. There is less strain here, less contradiction. Venus in Taurus knows what it likes, and once it likes something, it does not see any reason to pretend otherwise. This placement is not interested in noise for the sake of noise. It is not impressed by intensity that disappears in 3 days, by people who make huge declarations and then vanish, or by attraction that feels unstable, theatrical, or impossible to build on. Venus in Taurus wants something it can actually live with, something it can trust, something that still feels good after the mood changes. That is one of the core truths of this placement. It is not only looking for attraction, it is looking for continuity. Now, that does not mean Venus in Taurus is boring. People say that far too quickly when they see a Venus placement that values steadiness. This placement is sensual, deeply responsive, physically aware, and often very tuned into pleasure. But the pleasure has to be real. Not abstract, not all in the imagination, not all in potential. Venus in Taurus wants something that can be touched, felt, repeated, enjoyed, and trusted. This is a placement that tends to understand love through consistency. Not just words, not just chemistry, not just promises. Consistency. Who is here? Who follows through? Who keeps the same tone over time? Who makes things feel calm instead of uncertain? That matters more here than flash. So when Venus in Taurus is attracted, it usually does not happen in the same fast, sharp way that it does for Venus in Aries. It tends to happen through comfort, through ease, through a growing sense that this person feels good to be around. Not exhausting, not chaotic, not demanding in a way that disturbs the nervous system. There is often a strong bodily intelligence with this placement. Venus in Taurus can sense very quickly whether a person, place, or atmosphere feels right. Sometimes they may not explain it well in words, but they know it in their body. They know whether something feels safe enough, warm enough, pleasant enough, grounded enough to trust. And that physical component matters, because Taurus is an earth sign, and Venus here wants love to exist in the real world. Not just in texts, fantasies, concepts, or emotional speeches. It wants quality time. It wants dependable presence. It wants the relationship to actually have weight. This is why Venus in Taurus often value simple things more than dramatic things. A reliable pattern, a good meal, a peaceful evening, physical affection, a space that feels beautiful, a person who makes life easier rather than harder. That does not sound flashy, but it is powerful. Because a lot of people talk about love while constantly creating instability, Venus in Taurus is much more interested in whether the connection can hold. Now, when this placement likes someone, it does not usually hide in a complicated way. But it also does not move fast. It watches. It feels things out. It notices whether the dynamic is stable. It takes its time deciding whether this is something worth investing in. And that word matters too, investing. Because Venus in Taurus does not like wasting energy. Once it gives its time, loyalty, body, affection, or emotional steadiness to something, it expects that to mean something. This is not one of those placements that wants to keep everything casual forever, just because that sounds modern. It wants to know what this is becoming. Not on the first day, necessarily, but eventually. If there is no direction, patience runs out. Now, this placement is often described as loyal, and that is true. But the deeper reason is not moral superiority. It is preference. Venus in Taurus does not enjoy constant change in emotional dynamics. It prefers to build one good thing then keep starting over. It prefers depth through repetition, familiarity that gets richer, trust that grows because it has been tested over time. This is also why it can stay too long. That is one of the shadows here. Because once Venus in Taurus becomes attached, it can be very slow to let go. Even when something is clearly not working anymore, there may still be a strong pull to preserve it, repair it, hold it together, or at least not disrupt it too quickly. This placement often needs more time than others to accept that comfort and compatibility are not always the same thing. Sometimes what feels familiar is no longer healthy. Sometimes what feels stable is actually just stuck. And Venus in Taurus has to learn the difference. Now, let's talk about attraction style. Venus in Taurus is usually drawn to quality. That can mean physical beauty, yes, but not only that. It can mean good taste, pleasant energy, a beautiful voice, a calming presence, emotional steadiness, physical grace, or someone who simply feels well put together in a real and unforced way. This placement usually notices texture, how someone speaks, how they move, how they dress, how they smell, how they hold eye contact, whether their presence feels nourishing or draining. There is often a refined sensory filter here. They may not be loud about it, but they know what feels good and what doesn't. That applies to people, environments, objects, music, food, and lifestyle choices. In relationships, this placement often shows affection through reliability, checking in, being present, creating comfort, giving practical care, staying warm and physically affectionate once trust is established. It is not always dramatic in expression, but it is steady. And sometimes that steadiness is underrated because people are so trained to chase intensity that they forget how attractive calm can be. Venus in Taurus can be extremely magnetic precisely because it is not performing all the time. There is a settled quality here, a fullness, a grounded sensuality. It does not need to announce itself every 5 minutes. It just is. Now, with that said, this placement can absolutely be possessive. Let's not romanticize everything. If Venus in Taurus loves, it tends to bind. Not always in a controlling way, but in a definite way. This placement likes to know where it stands. It likes security. It likes knowing that what matters is protected. So if insecurity enters the picture, the shadow can show up as jealousy, stubbornness, or an unwillingness to adapt. Not because the feelings are fake, but because this placement does not enjoy instability once it has committed. And this is where the humor of Venus in Taurus sometimes appears. Because for all its calm image, this placement can become surprisingly immovable once it has decided something. A Venus in Taurus person may look serene, sensible, and unbothered until you try to disrupt a bond, a routine, a standard, or a preference they have already settled into. Then suddenly you discover that beneath the soft lighting and the nice voice is a mountain. And the mountain is not moving. That can be admirable. It can also be extremely inconvenient. Now, in terms of what this placement needs in love, the answer is not complexity. It needs trust. It needs dependability. It needs physical and emotional steadiness. It needs enough time to unfold naturally. It needs a connection that is enjoyable in ordinary life, not only in heightened moments. This placement is usually not looking for a relationship that feels like a crisis with chemistry. It is looking for something that makes the body unclench. And that is a big distinction. Because Venus in Taurus often knows that the real test of a relationship is not how exciting it is at midnight after 2 glasses of wine and a dramatic conversation. The real test is whether the connection still feels good on a Tuesday afternoon when life is normal. Can you relax here? Can you trust this person? Does this actually add to your life? Does your system feel safer or more tense around them? Venus in Taurus pays attention to that, even if quietly. Now, let's bring this into money. This is one of the classic placements for valuing material stability, but that does not automatically mean wealth, and it does not automatically mean greed. What it usually means is that the person wants tangible security and tends to understand value through usefulness, quality, and longevity. They often prefer buying one good thing over 5 cheap things. They may spend more, but they often want it to last. There is usually some instinct here for worth, especially when the placement is functioning well. But the shadow is attachment, holding onto what feels safe, even when it has become limiting. Overspending for comfort, using pleasure as a way to avoid movement, staying in financial patterns simply because they are familiar. So again, the lesson is not to stop valuing stability. The lesson is to avoid confusing comfort with wisdom every single time. Now, in terms of self-worth, Venus in Taurus tends to build confidence through solidity, through having something real, through knowing its own tastes, through being able to trust its own preferences, through creating a life that feels physically and emotionally supportive. This placement usually does not thrive when pushed to be constantly spontaneous, hyper-adaptable, or emotionally chaotic. It tends to feel stronger when life has enough stability for pleasure to actually register. Now, one of the best things about Venus in Taurus is that it teaches people how to enjoy what they already have. That is not a small thing. A lot of people are always leaning into the next thing, the next high, the next attraction, the next possibility. Venus in Taurus has the potential to really inhabit the present, to savor, to stay, to build richness through attention and care. That is beautiful when it is conscious, but when unconscious, it turns into resistance. Resistance to change, resistance to endings, resistance to growth that requires discomfort. So the development of this placement often depends on learning that security is strongest when it is chosen fresh, not just maintained out of habit. If you have Venus in Taurus, one of the best questions you can ask yourself is, do I still love this? Or have I just gotten used to it? That question applies to relationships, money, routines, environments, and even identity. Because this placement can remain loyal to something long after the life has gone out of it, simply because once it says yes, it means yes. That is a beautiful trait. It just needs consciousness around it. And if you love someone with Venus in Taurus, understand this. Do not rush them. Do not demand instant emotional acrobatics. Do not keep changing the rules. Do not confuse calm with lack of feeling. This placement often loves deeply, but it loves through steadiness, not chaos. It may not always be the quickest to open, but once it does, it tends to show up in a real way. Feed the bond. Protect the trust. Respect the pace. Mean what you say. Be consistent. That will get you much further than trying to impress them with drama, intensity, or emotional fireworks that disappear by morning. Now, when Venus in Taurus is functioning well, it is one of the most attractive placements in the chart. It is warm, magnetic, pleasurable to be around, grounded, loyal, genuine, sensually alive without needing to force anything. It creates safety without becoming cold. It creates beauty without turning superficial. It creates attachment without immediately turning unstable. But when it is not understood, it can become rigid, too attached, too slow to change, too resistant to letting go. Too likely to stay because leaving feels harder than enduring. So the key for Venus in Taurus is not to become more detached or more restless. It is to stay rooted without becoming stuck. To keep the loyalty, but allow movement. To keep the standards, but stay open. To keep the desire for stability, but not at the cost of truth. Because when that happens, Venus in Taurus becomes exactly what it is meant to be. A placement that knows how to build love slowly, enjoy it fully, and make it last without draining the life out of it.